That was the Grizzly. that that was the Grizzlies game. There's there's a feeling that you can get once you've ascertained that certain trends have crystallized when it comes to this basketball team. There was sort of a reason that there was tentative hope after the surprising winning streak that the team went on, like 5 games. And that was mainly due to the fact that not only is coaching bad, but there's certain sort of things that this team does at times that makes it hard to really consider that they have really truly turned a corner. Now, I definitely got swept up in the positivity a bit and was like, yes. And I don't want this to sound like I am burying the Wizards, but in order to be considered a good team, these kind of losses shouldn't be considered commonplace for the Wizards, but it is. I mean, in a myriad of ways, in a comedy of errors, these things are how the Wizards lose. You turn over the ball 30 times over. You constantly are having the offense kind of be randomized to where Robin Lopez is the fulcrum of your offense at times because he can hit a hook shot. Beal going cold obviously doesn't help since he's the only true consistent offensive player on the team, but literally shooting yourself in the foot against a team that has an electric point guard, loves to run the break, and also just finished destroying a broken and brittle Houston Rockets team. When you add all these things together, it does make it look bad. And initially, this game was close. They seemed to be going back and forth, but ultimately the Grizzlies out hustled, out rebounded, and outworked the Wizards. This is something that has happened multiple times throughout the season, more so than these wins. These wins were rare. This win streak was unexpected, and though I did say, hey, it'd be really cool if they continued this. Hey, it seems like the resiliency has sort of like solidified itself. The Wizards losing in this way is something that is not new, and it just continues to highlight the significant issues that plague this team. And though coaching is not the only factor here, it is one of the major ones. There's a lot of confusing moves that happen during the game, such as the fact that the center lineup seems to be in constant flux, and players who play well are not guaranteed good consistent play. There's this sort of odd disconnect between what should logistically be happening and what actually is happening. And when the Wizards lose in a myriad of frustrating ways, it can make it hard to say that all of this can be attributed to injury and COVID, especially with the Wizards getting farther and farther away from that. And the only reason this loss stings in the way it does is because the Wizards are behind. They're sort of like a student who has procrastinated all of the assignments and literally has to do all these projects all at once if they want to pass and graduate. Those kind of situations force you to have to be absolutely perfect or very close to it. And the way that the Wizards are currently operating, it seems as though this sort of scenario is not one where the Wizards could come back from. Now, would I be cool with it? Yes, but that's why I was sort of tentative about saying that they could definitely make the playoffs or definitely make the play-in when they're having nights like this and Beal is struggling. Though Russ did have a good game at a point in time, he was having a good game in the first quarter, and then the second just turned into it's hilarious to see how many different ways you can turn over the ball. There were unforced errors. There were like, oh hey, Davis Bertans, let me throw it behind the back for no reason and cause chaos. Great. And Russ just dribbled it off someone's foot, So you have this situation where the Wizards can't afford to have these kind of games, and it's why they're not considered a good team, and that's because they aren't a team that can just sort of rattle off wins. They kind of have to earn every single one. Beyond a few this season, I think really it's only been like a Timberwolves game or two. I think it's both the Timberwolves games where they really controlled the game throughout. But beyond that, it's been, hey, we're gonna win because this guy missed a shot. Like how is it that the Wizards have had 2 games now where they won because somebody missed a shot? That's not to say that the Wizards haven't had gutsy wins, and I'm not trying to use this loss as a referendum on the entire season as a whole, since the entire season as a whole hasn't yet been completed. But it's really hard to look at those gutsy wins and see that the same problems existed within those victories. Like, hey, the Wizards would have had a better rebounding moment here, or if the Wizards didn't take out X player and left X player in, then like things would be different. But yeah, as far as just this idea of, hey, the Wizards can do things, it's hard to be confident in that when literally every win is just, let's appreciate this win because we don't know when this will happen again. I can definitely say, as a fan of the team, I see fans of other teams that can be confident in their team's ability to bounce back a little bit more than Wizards fans. And of course that, delusion varies, but certain franchises, that are good can lose a game or two and it not be this painful, only because of the fact that with the Wizards, again, they're operating behind the 8 ball, and to come out and have a showing like this after what was definitely a heartbreaking loss on a back-to-back does not really instill much confidence, especially because it's not that the Grizzlies are bad, but they're a team that is beatable. They're not in Jazz, Clippers, Lakers, Bucks, Sixers range where it's like, okay, if we lose to them, it makes sense because like those teams have really good stars and a really good foundation and just overall are really hard to beat. It feels like the Wizards can be beaten by anyone, and there's not really anything to separate this team. The winning streak gave some potential. If I look at like the youth, you got Rui and Nenny doing things. Rui tends to be a bit invisible during certain games. Same with Denny. Denny did come on, like he was starting to hit threes a lot, but it feels like these two they're not getting opportunities in a consistent manner that allows them to establish a rhythm, or they're just struggling, which happens. Your young players are going to struggle. That's why you kind of don't want to judge any kind of draftee until like maybe 3-4 years down the line. Everyone sees these good players that play really well immediately when they're drafted and then ascribe that to every single player. That's just not how it works. So, I'm happy with Denny Rui. Isak Bonga got some play again. I never thought I'd hear that Isak Bonga played 2 games in a row. That's amazing. I am genuinely shocked. And he plays good defense. His shooting sometimes leaves a lot to be desired, but at the start of the season, he was shooting pretty well. I like that when he was catching the ball, he recognized, hey, you know what? I'm going to just pass. I'm going to swing this to the next guy. It sucks because there were moments where he was open and I think he could have taken that shot, but he didn't. He swung it to the next guy, and I think that's better than trying to force the issue. Garrison Matthews got run, and then he didn't. Mo Wagner got run, and then he didn't. And it seems like some of these players on the starting lineup are starter by name and not really by, hey, we're going to put you back in. We're just not putting you back. Okay, I guess we're just not putting them back in. It's really tough to say anything that is effusive with the Wizards. It's hard for me to be jovial when referencing this team because it's hard to find like a pocket of light that won't get snuffed out by a decision that will embrace mediocrity. And when you look at Scott Brooks, when you look at these other coaches that have gotten fired recently, Ryan Saunders got fired despite the Timberwolves basically being a rebuilding team and him maybe not being ready for the coaching job, but still having to coach a team with certain expectations usually lends you a certain leash. And then Lloyd Pierce got fired for similar reasons, despite, both teams having their own internal struggles with injuries as well as other things, but every team deals with these things. And so instead of that being the excuse to keep them, they were removed. And the difference is those guys they only got 2 seasons with that team. I think Ryan was around for 3, I believe. I think it's both 2. And interestingly enough, it was pointed out that Lloyd Pierce has the exact same record as Scott Brooks, who has been with the team for 4 years. Oh no, 5, because they signed him in 2016. Yeah, to get KD to come over, and it didn't happen. It's a moot point though, because being a Wizards fan means knowing that the team will avoid doing anything beneficial for itself and kind of just fall into random good things. And like I said, I don't want to look at this loss as a referendum on the season, but it's hard for me to establish any confidence with this team when that win streak feels a little bit illusory. I can't really make myself convinced that yes, they can continue doing these things, because it's hard for me to look at a team that gets out-rebounded a lot, can turn over the ball, and if they don't start well, they can't seem to get it going. In the win streak, they were able to, but beyond like the fourth quarter where they kind of heated up a bit again, there was just, you could tell they were just sputtering to the finish while the Grizzlies just was doing whatever they want, Something that's really scary too is like, hey, the West was pretty good, so every time the Wizards played against a Western Conference team, it was a scary moment. But hey, the East is at least good at defense, and yeah, the Wizards aren't good at defense. And if they continue to try to rely on, hey, we'll just come back from behind, that's just not gonna work for that. You have to come out with consistent effort and energy, and you also have to be buoyed by the guy who's running the lineups. The coaching staff has to have these players know who's doing what. Like, it shouldn't take a players meeting of, hey, so what's our roles? Isn't that a little weird that it took them that long to go, hey, so like, what are we supposed to be doing? I feel like as a coach, you should know this. You should be able to establish this so your players aren't asking each other, so like, what are we supposed to be? So yeah, to say I'm worried, I'm not really worried. If you're a Wizards fan, you're kind of used to this stuff. It just happens. The only thing I'm really worried about is like long-term development of players. And it feels like that is not being focused on for obvious reasons. The team is trying to make the playoffs and trying to win. They're literally falling ass backwards into tanking, which is just kind of funny because they're so determined to not tank. They're like, we're not going to tank. And this kind of play is tank ball right there. It's the stuff that gets people saying, fade for Cade. Am I going to fade for Cade? I have no control over that. But would he develop well if we have the same exact coach? Probably not. When you have a coach that stunts the development of your players, pretty much kind of screwed. And so here's hoping that the Wizards do not embrace mediocrity and make changes at the end of the season, because we know there's no way in hell they're going to do it now. The next game is against the Clippers, who absolutely also beat the brakes off the Wizards. It was different that time because the Clippers were shooting an insane number, of which I think it was like 58%, 60, 70. Who knows? They couldn't miss. Wizards could, and they lost. So is round 2 going to be any different? I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know. If Beal has an off game, could happen. So yeah. Well, this guy says, Wizards are definitely they're 1-1 against the animal kingdom. You know, you can handle a Timberwolf, but you can't handle a Grizzly. And the last time that they tried to handle a Clipper, had a boating accident. So maybe just try shaving. Is that the trick? Just shaving with Clippers, not trying to steer a boat with them. Could be. We'll see. WizWatch. Yeah, this drawing was sloppy as hell. I'm not gonna